Hey guys, I have right now two of the co-hosts of the Wrestling Perspective podcast with me right now. Petey Williams, former X Division champion, currently working with Impact Wrestling. He has a friend behind him right now, peeking in. Dennis Farrell. You guys are, how many guys do you have? It's five now, right?
Too many.
Too many to count. There, every time I watch, there's always different amount of windows, but
Maybe.
they have a really cool show going on. You can check them out on YouTube. Lars Fredrickson, Jason Kendall used to be part of the show.
Still is.
Still is.
Still is. Dimitri Young is part of the show.
Darren McCarty.
Aaron McCarty, hockey. You know him from, what was that, 4 Stanley Cups?
Yep.
4 Stanley Cups. Yep.
So yeah, it's a really cool mix of teams. I'm sorry, really cool mix of co-hosts. I guess just like, how did you guys get the idea for the show? Like, how did it start? I know originally it was a podcast form, and Nick Aldis was on for a little bit, and Petey was in there in the beginning. Now it's it's taking off in Zoom form.
Yep. So I mean, the way it started, and then I'll let Dennis take over when I took the hiatus. Dennis and I, we had a mutual friend, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, bro.
Yeah. Adam.
And Adam Graham, shout out to you. He's down in I think Texas now, where they just had that huge snowstorm. We were friends, and then Dennis was was Adam's friend, so mutual friend right there. Went up for some drinks, all that kind of stuff. We hit it off because Adam wasn't really a wrestling fan, was he?
No.
So, but you were, and we were able to talk wrestling and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, this is great. This guy knows his stuff. And then Adam moved away. You and I kind of,
I didn't like Petey.
We hated each other. And then I guess years later, I was retired from wrestling at the time, and Jimmy Jacobs worked for WWE, and there was like a show in Detroit coming up, and I got some like free tickets and stuff, and I asked Dennis, I'm like, hey, you want to go? And then we just kind of hit it back off, and then he was already doing some podcast stuff with ESPN and all that kind of stuff, and then he said, hey, do you want to do a podcast? And I was like, nope. And he said, come on, man, it'll be fun. And then he eventually talked me into it, and I loved it. And that was part of the reason why I came back to wrestling. I love talking wrestling. Like, it's just something I love to do. Grew up when I was a kid. And then we did great. We had a lot of fun for a couple of years. And then I decided 2020 sucked, and I took a break for a year. And then that's where Dennis picked it up.
Yeah. He basically had it there. I bounced around with a lot of co-hosts, Eli Drake. Let's see, James Ellsworth was in there for a little bit. And it wasn't the same without Pete. And then I decided to stop for a little bit. And then Jason Kindle. And then someone else who got wrapped up in the Speak Out movement, who we don't really talk about anymore. We started a version of what we're doing now, but it was called Wrestling and Sports, Wrestling with Sports. And we just slowly gobbled up everybody as we went along. And now Petey decided to come back, and we dropped the sports and decided we wanted to bring back the old wrestling perspective.
And I will note, just because you guys dropped the sports in the title, you still talk about it a little bit. I mean, you at least have, to borrow, my daughter's trying to break in. She's learning how to open doors now.
To be 10 years old again.
To look at the panel that you guys have, like you have perspective, no pun intended, of different sports, and you kind of work in your own part of wrestling fandom in there. Some of the more recent interviews you did were Andy Williams, I just listened to, Butcher and the Blade. MJF was on there, Rich Swann, John Silver was a really good one. So you guys can check that out. Just search Wrestling Perspective Podcast on YouTube. It comes right up. Plenty of great content. Impact just announced that Sacrifice is coming back as the next Impact Plus special event. can't really talk about it without talking about the Steiner math promo. Like, Petey's infamous for that for many reasons, but I mean, what are you thinking about the longevity that promo got? Like, you were at Scott's side, and people still see it. They play it every week on the Twitch broadcast of Impact Wrestling. Like,
There's a T-shirt about it now. Everything.
Is there?
Yeah, it has the whole promo, I think, on the back.
Okay,
I believe, and on the front, maybe it's front and back or whatever. And I remember August of 2019, me and Steiner came back for an Impact Plus in California. We added Jordan Grace, calling her, I don't know, like, I think Thick Mama Pump or something like that. And I wanted to wear the shirt out there and say, Scott, just read the back of my shirt, recite the promo. Let's do it again. Yeah, but believe it or not, back then, man, sacrifice, right?
that was 2008.
Yeah, that's wow, and it still holds up today as probably one of the greatest promos in Impact history. That was one take, believe it or not. Like, I am not kidding. If you watch me in the promo, I literally, doing this with Scott, and then I literally look at the camera like this, like, are we still okay? I guess we're still rolling, like, and they kept it. And I think Scott wanted to do it again. And this, at the time, Vince Russo was like, the writer and the guy behind the camera, making sure the promos go good and stuff like that. And Scott's like, yeah, let's do it again. I stumbled over some things. And he's like, Vince, like, nope. He's like, that's your character, man. He's like, you have so much like pent up frustration that sometimes you stumble over your words that you can't even get it all out. Like, and that's part of your character. Had no idea that it was going to take off like it did. And then now, years later, if he brings up any math equation at all in front of a live crowd, you should hear them just, whenever he says 141 and 2/3% chance, the place goes nuts and they just love it. And it's good that he could still, it's good because he's always been that guy that's like Steiner, big dude, comes up with all these cool moves and all that kind of stuff. Well, obviously now, getting older and stuff, you can't be doing that stuff anymore. So it's good that he found something else and it happens to be math, which he's probably horrible at in real life. But then he can utilize that and just be a mouthpiece. It's great. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, I won't speculate at all, but I really hope they find some way to get him involved in the new sacrifice. COVID might prevent it. I don't know, but it's been seen so much on Twitch, like every week at like whatever time, it's like always the same part of the show. Like, you can set a watch to, okay, here's the Steiner math promo, and every week everybody's like, the numbers don't lie. And yeah, I'd love to see him, whether he sends in a video or whatever, like, just pay homage to it, because it's one of those things where it was like lightning in a bottle.
Well, I think the worst case scenario, I'm not going to say if he shows up or not, but worst case scenario, well, best case, he shows up and it is what it is. Worst case scenario, they show, that clip again.
Show the same
you know what I mean? Like, hey, they sacrificed 2008 or whenever it was.
What didn't you do another version of that promo last year or the year after?
It was 2017, I believe. I returned to Impact. It might have been early 2018. I don't really remember. And I won the Feast or Fired for the X Division title. So it probably was 2018. And I was on my way to, I think, challenge Matt Sydal he was the X Division champion at the time. And we didn't have this written in the show at all. And I had to do a promo, and we wanted to like kind of put us back together because he was on the show. I think he was Eli Drake's partner, and they were going to win the tag titles against LAX and all that kind of stuff. And I asked Scott, I'm like, hey, can you just, bust my promo? Because I have like a minute and a half to talk. I'm like, you can use 30 seconds or whatever, and bust it and talk about math and stuff. And he was like, well, what do I say? And I'm like, whatever, man. I may make up some math equations like you did before.
But in his voice, you can't skip over not doing the Steiner impression.
So he goes, shut up, Dennis. He says, what do you want me to say? And I'm like, well, I mean, just make up some stuff like you did before. He's like, make up? Math's got to add up, like, and I'm like, oh boy. So I'm like, that I don't think that added up before. He's like, yeah, it did. And I'm like, oh, okay. So he came in and started talking about fractions and stuff like that. Nothing big, but we just wanted to, and it was more for the boys, I guess, not so much for the audience. Like, we just wanted something in there. And I even mentioned Cracker Barrel and stuff, like when I did Colt Cabana's podcast many years ago, where I tell the Steiner story. So we just wanted to kind of, make that full circle and bring it back up. And I think we already completed that circle. So.
And then there's a lot to dive into with Sacrifice. First one you competed at in 2005, it was Team Canada against AMW and the Naturals. You got a chance to face Jushin Thunder Liger the following year, and then the Steiner math that was 2 years after that. But I mean, those first 2 years, like even that period of TNA, like it's crazy to think like how much was going on and still almost under the radar. Like I always tell people, like I didn't really catch on in the Nashville days. It was more like the Fox Sportsnet era. So I was like right around that. But I mean, some of the talent, like I'll just go to it. Like, why do you think we haven't seen Team Canada back? Like, we get shades of it with the North. You can say it's, okay, a foreign heel stable, but not really. It was like a nice twist on it. I mean, is that something that's ever been discussed, especially with like you and Scott back in the same company now, or is that just something that was a product of its time?
It's been discussed many times. It just never came to light. I think we were really serious about it probably in 2018. I don't think it was going to be a whole Team Canada thing. It never ended up happening, but I think we were supposed to have a pay-per-view in Canada, ended up being in Orlando. But I think like we were planning on something like because Matt Seidel had Josh Matthews in his cornerback when he was like a heel manager. And we were doing this program kind of leading up to like, and they even had me say like, well, I got something up my sleeve. And I think I was going to bring back Scott on that one. That was like 3 years ago. And it just never happened because it doesn't make sense doing it in Orlando. If it was in Canada, we probably would have done it. You may have seen me as the X Division champion that day. Like, who knows, right? But yeah, it's been discussed, and it's been discussed as recently as like a couple weeks ago when I was in Nashville, not with the head offices, but just among the boys, like Josh Alexander and stuff. We're all like, hey, let's make a new Team Canada. Like, we're always saying that, right? Yeah. But I mean, with COVID right now, I looked around and I said, yeah, that's a good idea, Josh. I looked around the locker room and I'm like, why? What's the deal with the lack of Canadians right now? Because it's usually we were a really heavy Canadian talent company for 2018-19. But with the border closing and stuff like that, like I know when Josh crosses the border to drive home, he's got a quarantine for 2 weeks, and Canada is serious about it. They got quarantine police. Like, you have to tell them where they're going. They'll come check up on you and all that kind of stuff. So right now it's tough. I wouldn't rule it out in the future. And, Scott's got a different role on TV now. Mm-hmm. He's like the authority figure guy, whatever like you want to call him. He's the authority figure.
He's a good antagonist.
Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't really make sense now. And with everything what's going on with like, you've seen AEW talent and New Japan talent on our show. Right now, it's not going to happen. I could tell you that. If it does, it would surprise me too. But that doesn't mean that we can't go down that road in the future.
Well, there's certainly been plenty of surprises this year. You just mentioned the New Japan talent, AEW talent. There's the whole Forbidden Door thing, which has become its own thing. Like, I mean, I'll ask Dennis, like, what's your perspective? I swear I'm not doing this as a pun. What's your perspective on how this has unfolded because you're so used to Impact being Impact, and then you have COVID. You know, it's just these are the guys in Nashville, and then we finally get open. Like, is there something you want to see from the AEW crossover or New Japan? Is there something that you really feel like should get more credit than it's getting right now? Like, what's your what are your thoughts on the whole thing like so far?
I'm going to take a page out of the Rocky Romero book when he was on talking about this. And I am kind of in the camp that he is I'm a little worried because one single thing that can go wrong can start a whole domino effect. We almost saw it with the Sammy Guevara stuff, which, trust me, I grilled Petey left and right on this, and he swears he doesn't know anything on it. I 90% believe him, but it you look at where the mothership is, and it's AEW, and then the logical fan goes, all right, what does AEW get out of it? Is it at the end of whatever the storyline is, are they going to be put on top of everybody else? Is it a situation where everybody comes up together? I'm still kind of skeptical because, Bill, you and we both are I around journalistic wrestling business type people. I'm a podcaster. You write, you run the website, which, by the way, thank you so much, because without your website support, our podcast would not be where it is today. And the fact that you, Colin, who is a great supporter of ours, writes amazing articles on these interviews we do, it helps get the word out. So I definitely wanted to say at the top of the show, thank you guys for that. It doesn't go unnoticed. Every time you guys put out an article, we like put it in our little group thread and we all read it and geek out over it. So just know we appreciate it. But back to the point is, there's got to be something. I like the fact that it's not an invasion.
Mhm.
I also think that once COVID's over and things come back to normal, it can just be forgotten and be done with. I think this is just a tool to survive. I'm not sure there's any long-term plans from any of the major companies to keep this going past COVID. So I guess enjoy it while it lasts, because I have a deep feeling that it's not going to stick around and it's not going to be a thing going forward.
Isn't that a good takeaway though? Because I mean, yes, there's the argument and there's concern that okay, AEW is going to go over and they're getting all the wins and what like, and I don't necessarily want to see 50-50 booking and like trading wins, but I think eventually, yeah, there has to be a turning point and Impact has to get, they have to get their win. But I feel like not having it go past COVID and not having it be like this long-term thing kind of avoids the problem that Ring of Honor ran into, where Bullet Club left and the Elite left. They started their own company, and then for, I mean, almost a year, it was like, okay, what are we without them? And they had to take that months finding out who they were, and now they're finally turning the corner and building talent. And Ring of Honor TV has been great lately, but I think it was the beginning of 2019 into basically when COVID stopped them, it was very uncertain. So I think in a way, just doing this until, for the interim, I think is going to be a good thing.
As a fan, and I'll keep this as PG as possible, but it'll give me wrestling blue balls. You're going to get hooked. You're going to want these dream matches, and then they're going to take it away, and we don't know if we'll ever get this again. I think you enjoy it while you have it, but when it's gone, I believe it's going to be gone.
I mean, I'm looking at it as Rebellion is the blow off, so to speak, and Kenny Omega, we could sit here and speculate the Omega symbols in the logo and he's going to be back and whatever, but I mean, I'm okay with this because it's something I didn't expect. And then when it happened, I was like, okay, I really have no ceiling as far as what to expect from it. I think my issue is, okay, if you look at Rebellion, what happens in the interim? And Matt Hardy and Private Party showed up, and that was a lot of fun. And now Finjuice, that, that's on the ground floor. It's how do we get from right now, middle of February, to Rebellion? Because as I said at the top of this, Sacrifice just got announced. We don't really know where it's going. It looks like Moose against Rich Swann, and how to, like, do we see more AEW involvement? Like, I think there's a lot of moving parts, and it has my interest. And it's just, it's an interesting time for a fan. It's kind of nice, like, actually not knowing what's going on.
Bill, if only we had a guy from Impact on this show with us right now who could probably enlighten us a little bit more, it would be totally a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
Well, no, and one of the reasons why is, since we are in an interesting time, think about how Impact does tapings, right? There's no fans. All right. That's unheard of in all of wrestling history. When Impact or other companies, when they tape multiple weeks of television in a row, it gets leaked out, right? Because the fans are in there, they're taking notes and stuff, giving it to whoever on the internet, or just sharing it, and everybody knows what's going to happen. This is probably the one good thing that came out of two, the mergers, in
the wrestling industry.
Yeah.
I would argue this is the best thing. I've said that since the beginning. Like, I don't want to say got bored with wrestling, but it just kind of reached a point right like last March where I was like, like almost at a breaking point. And it's been really refreshing watching every week, not knowing, like, yes, I still find some stuff out. It's the nature of what I do, and just talking, like having relationships with people. But I pretty much go in blind every week watching TV, and it's been very refreshing. And I mean, has that made it working easier? Because you don't have to worry about anything leaking out, and you can kind of control what goes on, and you don't have to worry about feedback. Like, you can just kind of tape everything and let it play out. And then, like, how does that help you? How does it change your viewpoint as a producer? Just not having to worry about that.
There's a lot of things you don't have to worry about. There's no crowd, right? So I mean, if there's something that we don't want leaked out, it's not going to get leaked out. You know what I mean? Unless the guy holding the camera leaks it out, or whatever the case may be, or like, somebody else. So that's good. I mean, it's bringing surprises back. The one thing that I know you said, Bill, that you want to see, once COVID's done, kind of like, hey, let's forget about this, let's go on our way, and, companies go back to wherever. But I think the one thing that's missing with this whole merger, since it's so spectacular and it's so unique and it's never been done before, like the first person we had is when Kenny Omega came over with the title to Impact. And then at the man, what was the name of the pay-per-view that we just had? Like
Hard to Kill.
Yeah, hard to kill. Was that the one where he was in the tag match? So, and just to see him show up in front of no fans, that's kind of okay. But imagine if we had a packed arena and Kenny Omega shows up for the first time in Impact Ring. Like, imagine that. Imagine the anticipation. Imagine just the people there going nuts and stuff like that. That's what I miss. That's what I want to see. So I hope it doesn't right away, once COVID's done and we open the doors back up, that it just goes away. I would like for it to, and if anything, it'll make the talent. You don't know what got over and all that kind of stuff. You're watching this show, or I'm producing the show. There's no fans. Nobody's reacting. I don't know if this is, to the audience, if they're going to, connect with it or whatever. So that's the tough part about this. I mean, as a producer, it's just really tough. You don't know. You're guessing. You're not feeling the crowd. You're guessing. You're like, okay, how long do I hold this pose for? The crowd would be going, clapping right now. It's really awkward. But at the same time, you can also, if somebody gets hurt, you could say, cut. Okay. You know what I mean? Let's go on to the next match because this guy's hurt. You don't have to like finish through the match, risk more injury and stuff like that. So it's more controlled, which I like. But at the same time, I don't, because there's no fans. So it's a big it's mixed feelings. It really is about this whole COVID thing. But I do like that the stuff's not getting out anymore. That's great to me.
Let me jump in though, Bill, because you said something and it's interesting. Is for me, if there's one guy I wanted to see an impact, it's not Kenny Omega. I mean, we've been wrestling fans for how long and how many years have we always been teased with Chris Jericho? Chris Jericho may go to Impact. Chris Jericho may do this. For me, the one guy I want to see show up with the fans is Chris Jericho in an Impact ring, because I think out of every wrestler, out of every storyline you try to tell me is going to make sense, whether the invisible hand and Kenny Omega had this planned all along, whatever, it's Chris Jericho for me that has that emotional I want to see in an Impact ring with fans.
Yeah, I totally would agree with you. And I think, not that I'm putting any time frame on it. Like I said, I used Rebellion as like, maybe we'll see it less of a focal point, like less shock. Maybe it's something that's more ingrained without it being such a strong part of the show. But like, yeah, I really want to see the opportunity for stuff like that, for the performers to work in front of a crowd. Like, one of the things that I was critical of was the early shows were silent, and then you guys finally just added the crowd noise, I think starting with Hard to Kill, and that's really added something to it. But yeah, I think that live element and being able to gauge how you're doing like live will really add something back into it and make it more exciting, instead of trying to figure it out and wait. Like right now, you literally have to wait until it airs and you see it on social media. There's no other way to react to it. So yeah, I think Jericho's a guy that I think would be amazing, like, to see on Impact. Matt Hardy's a guy that I didn't think I would see on Impact, just because of the way he left, even though they smooth things over afterwards. But there's so many possibilities. And one of the other things I do want to see is Impact show up on AEW, because I know like the Good Brothers, they're contracted to Impact and they showed up, but I'm still holding out hope that, much like Chris Jericho going to Impact, I hope we kind of see it play out the other way too. And maybe that's
the talent. Who's the one talent on the Impact roster, if you had to pick one, you want to see on AEW? Because I've been thinking about this myself.
I don't know. Like, I'm going to say Deanna.
Ooh, like, that's a good one.
I feel like, like we're talking as far as, what AEW could add to Impact, and Impact's Knockouts roster has been bar none like the best for the past 2 years. Mm-hmm. She is Wrestler of the Year. She's Female Wrestler of the Year, Knockout of the Year. I want to see her there. And I know I'm not the only one that wants to see her there. Like, I feel like, that's something that we need before this is all over too. So I go back to the Ring of Honor comparison. Like, I don't want that to happen because of all of the fallout afterwards, but I'm enjoying Impact and AEW and now New Japan right now. Like, there's so much that can happen, and you don't know what's going to happen until it airs. So,
well, I think the difference is with the Ring of Honor thing, like, the Young Bucks and Adam Page, like all those guys, they were full time on that roster. That's the big difference. Like, the people that showed up at Impact already, like Kenny Omega, Private Party, Matt Hardy, they are not. They're still under their AEW contract, so they're not like it's not going to be the same. So it's not like, hey, you removed like the top 5 guys from our company, now good luck. That's what happened at Ring of Honor. Like, those guys were the draw. They put all their money into them and funneled everything, and then you remove them. So now you have to build other people up. What's different is you have like Kenny Omega, and he gets in the ring at Hard to Kill with Sabin, Swan, Moose, Storm, and that's a rub right there. You know what I mean? Like, they're competing. Like, it's two company. It's totally different in that aspect. The the crowd noise that you brought up earlier, I do like that a lot. To people, they might be like, well, there's no crowd there. Like, why are they giving crowd noise? It does add to it. You're right. The only thing that is kind of tricky is, when we're doing a live show like Hard to Kill and the commentators are commentating and something happens, they can't hear the crowd noise. That's just for, the fans at home to hear. So they don't even know if they're reacting properly. So it might come off a little odd, but hey, man, it's COVID. I mean, we're doing the best we can to try to keep wrestling going for everybody, right?
Yeah. And all I wanted, like crowd noise or ambient noise, just something besides the ring bumps, because it just, it breaks it up. Like, best way I could describe it, you have a sound machine at night, helps you sleep.
Yep.
Same thing here, just breaks up the silence. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, obviously I'm not looking at it as replacing a live crowd. Nothing will ever do that, but it just helps add to the presentation. And I think the first few weeks of the COVID era were very strong shows. And then as it went on, I was like, okay, what else would I want from the at-home viewing experience to enhance it? And I think that's the one thing I kept going back to. And now that it's there, I feel like I'm enjoying the shows even more. Like, I say each week, like, we do a Impact post show on WrestleZone, and I keep saying, like, I think the undercard and week in, week out, like, every single show is very consistent. There's no, usually you have like, okay, a great show and then these are okay. Like, these are consistently good shows week in and week out, and I think that helps formulate your opinion when you're watching it.
I think on the other side too, adding the crowd noise, at least for the WWE product, and that was the really only product I saw this happening, was it covered up that glaring, those wrestlers did not have that. I kind of call it the indie show banter, where they talk to each other in the ring after every move, and sometimes it's comical and sometimes it's not. You really get that on the indie circuit, but it doesn't work well for that WWE product. And when I was listening to the show without the crowd noise, it really took me out of the action when you would hear like a Charlotte Flair trying to banter back and forth, and it just didn't work for that presentation either.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree. I mean, is there anything, I'll ask either one of you, is there anything that you still feel like is missing from the show that you maybe want to see with the next set of tapings that they can do in post-production? Anything like that would, take it to the next level?
I don't know. I mean, I do like the Thunderdome concept that WWE's doing. It's okay, like with the screens and stuff like that. And then AEW having fans and stuff. I know they did at at the Super Bowl, they had I don't know how many fans were in there, like 20,000 or something like that, Dennis.
Yeah.
But then they had cardboard cutouts between people and it looked like it was a full house. That's kind of cool. I mean, I wouldn't mind that, but again, wrestling's different, when you set up the hard cam across and you see the crowd, you don't want to see a bunch of cardboard cutouts. And that's why like in football, they don't really have a hard cam with the fans. It's all action in the ring. Like, it doesn't matter, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what the answer is to that. I want to see them remove the guardrails, really. Like, I do, because why do we even have guardrails? They're to protect the fans and the rest. Like, there's no fans. Like, so maybe they should put up something else, like tiki torches or something different. Fire coming up. I don't know, but the guardrails I'd like to see go. I think that's, if there's no fans there, there's no need for guardrails. I think that's just you just turn the guardrail into a prop, pretty much.
Is that something strictly COVID related, or is that something, because I've had the conversation before, and I know a few wrestlers or promoters have said, like, we don't want to use guardrails because it doesn't really do anything, like, as far as the hockey style barricades versus the like the traditional silver fence, like the bike rack looking one. Like,
yeah,
are you just talking about COVID
Just
related or
no, I'm just talking about so the purpose of guardrails, right, is the separation of, the fans and the wrestlers. Like the fans are not allowed to go in through, over that guardrail. That's the purpose of it, right? It's kind of like that caution tape that, police use, like do not cross this. And then that way you're at risk if you do that. And the same thing, if the wrestlers go into the crowd, right? Now the company's on the hook now because now they can injure a fan and stuff like that. So that's the purpose of guardrails. It's like a real life barrier, not an imaginary one. Now there's no purpose of guardrails unless you have fans there. There really isn't. So
Well,
that's
NXT did it, and I really like that product, that dirty, dingy feeling that NXT is bringing to that product
right about Philly.
with that hockey style barricade that they kind of have up now. That's way different than what anybody else is doing.
and that's more like a COVID thing. That makes sense. Like, hey, don't breathe on me. You walk in any store right now, and they have the shield up or whatever. That all makes sense. It's just that if they're, but again, NXT, the way they were doing it wasn't like their, trainees or whatever the case may be. Weren't they the ones like sitting there and clapping and all that kind of stuff? Like that's kind of cool. I like some sort of noise. That's good, but the guardrails, if there's no fans, that's one thing that I would be like, hey, let's do something different. I don't know what it is. Like I'm presenting a problem now and I have no solution to it. So that's not even fair for me to do. But I'm like, hey, if we could do something that's cool that nobody else is doing, a little tweak to the show, I'd love that.
Yeah, just blame me for asking the question.
Yeah, no, it's no problem. That's my own personal thought. I mean, I don't know what we would put in place of it. Maybe I'm totally wrong and off basis, but I always think like, why do we have guardrails? I'm like, why not just like have it like on a float, like, be surrounded by water or something like that, like blood sport or something, you know what I mean? Like that'd be kind of cool.
Well, I know one thing that everybody always brings up is Club La Vila WCW. So your floating ring idea might be a good one.
There you go. I mean, that costs a lot of money, but I'd love that. Wow.
You have a pool in Nashville anywhere? I know I kind of mentioned earlier that, we don't really know what's coming up with Sacrifice. We talked a little bit about the history of Sacrifice, but, without getting too far into it, what do you kind of hope for, fans to catch on to with with Sacrifice 2021 coming up on March 13th? Like, we have Moose making a strong case for why he's going to be in the title picture, or he is the TNA champion. Rich Swann has beaten everybody that has been put in front of him. Like, what do you kind of hope the next step is from a fan perspective, Dennis?
So I catch a lot of heat because as much as I like Rich Swann as a person, I don't think Rich Swann is the perfect Impact champion going into this merger or talent share with AEW. You look at AEW, New Japan, Impact. I think Rich Swann is the weakest from a booking standpoint of the champions of those shows. And I would love to see them just maybe cycle him out or move him to a different position, maybe back to X Division champion. But I really feel like Moose should be the guy. He's the big bad guy. He is a guy that you look at and legitimately think he might be able to take on any character. When I see Rich Swann in the ring with Kenny Omega, I think they're going to put on a great match. There's no way on earth Rich Swann should be able to beat Kenny Omega. When I look at Jon Moxley holding the New Japan United States title, which for all intents and purposes right now is the New Japan Strong Championship, I don't think Rich Swann has a chance against him. I just want to see a Moose in there where I think Moose could give Moxley a run for his money. Moose could give Kenny Omega a run for his money. So I want to see a little bit of shuffling of their champions.
Okay, and I'll maybe to Petey pose the question: why do you feel like Moose is a strong candidate to be put in that spot? Like we talked about, he's the TNA champion, whether it's self-proclaimed or not. Like, it felt like for the last part of 2020, he was, kind of circling around, like, so to speak. And now he's really making his mark, like going after Rich. He's in the main event consistently. Like, why do you feel like he's a good representative of Impact Wrestling, like, overall?
I mean, I really like Moose when it comes to his character. I thought, he should have been champion long ago. That's just my personal opinion. Moose has, if you look at him last year at around the same time, or even maybe a little bit before that, look at the shape he's gotten into. You know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of things that not were wrong with him, but a lot of tweaks that he needed to make before being, like, the face of the company. And like, just, I've seen the evolution of Moose since 2017. Even like the way he dresses, the way he carries himself, both like backstage and in front of the camera, the shape he's in now, even his in-ring ability. I mean, he's a guy that's hungry and wants to be the champion, and it's no shock to where he's at right now. And I don't know why they haven't pulled the trigger on him. I don't know if it's like it's an obvious choice, so maybe they don't want to do that. I'm not really sure. So, but he definitely is that guy that, you look at him and he does look like a superstar. Nothing against Rich, you know what I mean? Sometimes your past comes back and you carry that luggage with you. Like, everybody knows Rich was in 205 Live, right? So you think 205 Live, how the company booked 205 Live is just like, okay, like, nobody really cares about it, like, let's be honest. Yeah, it's a gimmick.
It's unfair.
Yeah. But Rich, no matter what, man, no matter what, he's putting on, like, probably the best match on the show. Like, you can ask him to do anything. You could say, Rich, I need you to have an awesome 5-minute match, or, hey, Rich, I need you to run the gauntlet tonight and do 35 minutes. And it's going to be phenomenal. I've had the privilege of working him twice. And it's great. I loved working with him. Like, we're on the same page. He wants to work hard in the ring. He's not one of those guys that slacks. Like, he has great work ethic. And I think him being the champion, like, it paid off. I think when you look at the transition, they had Tessa as the champion, right? And obviously she left the company, and then they said, okay, what do we got to do now? And I believe Eric Young was the champion after that. Am I right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it's like, okay, who's going to be our next baby face right now? It's hard in a wrestling company to build a baby face. Very hard.
Especially in the situation that you guys were in. I mean, you have Tessa leave the company, and then there was the multi-man match, and then Michael Elgin leaves for his own reasons. And you have Eddie Edwards in there, who you could say is always going to be a baby face.
Yeah.
So it's, you pose a good question, like, how are you going to build the next one? Because Eddie, you already know what you're getting with Eddie. Like, people get behind him. He's short of calling him like the All-American, like that. But I think Rich is, like, I knew him before Impact. I knew him before 205 Live. Like, fantastic wrestler. And if you want to look at the match he just had with Tommy, like, that was great storytelling. So I don't think it's a case of him not being able to be in the main event level, because he can tell a story and have a barn burner match. It's just that that 205 Live thing. It's like, it's people are going to still be like, oh, you're that guy. And it's unfair in a lot of ways.
No, I mean, yeah, like I said, I agree. Like, Rich, one of the most talented guys on our roster, and I did forget about Eddie, but Eddie's like, they had the belt for a little bit before Eric Young got it, right? So it's going to be tough to build a baby face in this era right now. And that's why you might see, like, okay, what are the baby faces that we got? Everybody loves Tommy Dreamer. Everybody loves Rich Swann. Everybody loves Eddie Edwards. Like, that's that's what it's going to be. And if you've noticed, you haven't really seen too many turns going on in Impact. Actually, that's not true, but you haven't really seen like
There's
too many
been
turns. Yeah.
but not.
But it's way easier to turn somebody in this era, turn somebody heel than it is to turn them babyface and get the crowd behind them.
Mhm.
So it's tough. And like, you look at sometimes the belt, the title, it makes, the champion. It elevates that person. At this point, you look at Moose and everybody's like saying like, oh yeah, it's a gimme. He should be the champion, right? Well, if people are already saying that, does he need the belt? That's a question that it's like, okay, maybe not. Like, do we give it, like, it depends what you want to do. It depends the narrative that you're trying to tell. It depends about the story that you're trying to tell.
I forget, guys, we didn't even mention Sami Callihan once in this whole conversation. That's a crime in itself where he should be up there.
But I mean,
The
we're talking
babyface?
babyface and stuff. No,
Not as
he's
baby
great.
Oh, okay.
He's another guy. Like, Sammy, you could put him anywhere on the card. He's going to have a great match. He doesn't really need to be the world champion. Like, in my eyes, like, he was world champion. We did that. It just, right now, he could be in a wholly different angle and people be into it. And he's done it so much with Pentagon, with Eddie Edwards, with everybody he does stuff with. You don't need a belt for his storylines. You just don't. He does so well without it.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing it right now. Like, he's the proverbial devil on the shoulder, like in Trey's ear, and the stuff with Shamrock. He was the champion. Like, he's one of those guys that proved like he can do stuff with the belt, doesn't need it. And I'll transition into my next question, but maybe Moose is that guy. Like you said, like, he's proven he doesn't need it. He's getting over. Like, I becoming more of a fan especially as February moves on. I think he's been the strongest he's been in a year, but you're definitely seeing a change in him where last year, and I'll point to Petey's last match was against Moose like a year ago, February 2020. And he was, kind of like still doing the flashy thing, not really sure what he's doing. And now he's, he had that whole thing with EC3 and kind of transforming. It feels like he's finding his own way, and it's really paying off. It's, a main event level character, but then does he beat Rich? Does he keep saying he's the TNA champion? Does he do something else? Like, I think there's plenty of possibility coming up, and we're just gonna have to keep watching every Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna answer that question because you're gonna have to, like you said, you're gonna have to keep watching every Tuesday.
Sacrifice coming up March 13th, Impact Plus. I would recommend it. I mean, obviously you're going to recommend it, but No Surrender was a really fun show. Hard to Kill, like, very strong showing so far. I did just mention you had your last match against Moose. That was a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you use the R word?
No, I'm not retired.
No,
Jeez.
not retired.
No. I mean, I retired once. That was 2014. I stayed retired for 3 years. Lots of influences got me back into wrestling. One of them being Scott D'Amore, bugging me for many, many months. I finally gave in. Dennis had a huge hand in that too. But yeah, and then I was strong. And even like in the past, even 2019, I was doing a little bit of wrestling. In 2018, a little bit of producing. So you saw less of me and stuff like that. Doesn't mean I'm not going to have another run. Like I'm in probably maybe the second best shape of my life. My first best shape is when I was doing the Steiner stuff and all that. But yeah, I feel like I feel great right now. It's just that right now
they don't need them.
Yeah, they don't need me. Like, I mean, everybody's doing a phenomenal job and stuff. I'm like, I'll sit back behind the camera and do me and stuff and help elevate and coach the up and coming talent and put in my, years of experience. I have no problem with that. I actually love it.
I'll even throw this tease out there. he got new ring gear. I'm not going to tell you what it looks like, but he's got new ring gear. So you don't
Yeah,
go
I'm
out.
ready, man. I'm
Oh,
ready. I'm not saying retired. Like I
he's got
retired.
Pete Williams money, so he wants to get back out there.
Well, that I was gonna follow up with that. You always hear wrestlers talking about, well, I'm not working, but I always carry my gear with me. So, you know,
Yeah,
I'll
no,
always be ready.
definitely. I carry my gear, suit. Like you never know if you're going to be on camera wrestling, on camera not wrestling, but looking professional. You don't, or behind like a pre-tape or whatever the case may be. So, uh, the last couple tapings, I could have literally came with, I don't know, a suitcase with clothes, like just a change of clothes and stuff. But I bring more than that just in case, they're like, hey, somebody got COVID, you're up. Oh,
Mhm.
okay. I mean, that's inevitable. I mean, I'm shocked that COVID hasn't, being a contact sport and stuff and breathing all over each other. I'm surprised, COVID hasn't,
Yeah.
reared its ugly head at the tapings. But they take a lot of precautions, testing as soon as we get there and all that kind of stuff. So, um, I'm actually pretty surprised that we're all staying pretty clean, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's a good thing to see. Like that's one thing. I mean, we worry about like week in and week out. They're like, oh, how are they gonna do it? I mean, I talked to Steve Tortorello. He runs Warrior Wrestling in Chicago, and he said it's not a binary answer where it's not if you do this, it's unsafe, and if you don't do it, then you're safe. It's you have to do it in and take the responsibility of every doing every single thing you can to make sure that it is safe for talent, for everybody that's going to be there. And if you can do all that and take all that responsibility, then why not try and do it? And I think at the beginning of all this, people didn't really know, what side of the fence you fall on. And, there was that whole argument. But I think people are coming around like, okay, wrestling is going to be here. And if you can do it in all of those ways and keep everybody safe, and obviously you guys have, like, why not keep doing it? Like everybody else has to figure out a way to go to work. Like, so do you guys. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like everybody that steps foot in that building is getting tested. So it's not like they're picking and choosing who to test, not random tests or anything like that. Um, I just went back to Impact in January and I was really not surprised, but I was relieved, I guess. I'm like, oh wow, they're taking like obviously COVID seriously, just like the rest of the world, as they should. And they, have the medical staff on there, like on present and for all the testing and stuff. And they're following the CDC guidelines and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I don't have to preach about it because all the wrestling companies are pretty much doing that. Um, it's going to be interesting when fans come back, how that's going to look. I don't know if it's going to be after, everybody gets vaccinated and stuff. And then we can look back and say, man, 2020 sucked. You guys remember that year? Man, that was crazy. So hopefully we get there. That's what I'm rooting for.
usually I close out by asking, I've been doing a watch list feature, and it's favorite match from your own career or one that you've seen on TV recently. And I know there's a lot going on at taping, so maybe stuff didn't air yet. So I will not ask you about that part. Is there, I'll split it up. Dennis, is there a match that you've seen on Impact lately that you'd recommend to people watching? And Petey, is there a match from your respective career that you would say best highlights who you are as a performer?
All right.
You know what? We just talked about this the other night. I don't remember if it was on the show or on the phone, but and I forgive me, I don't remember the year, but it was Angle versus Jeff Jarrett right around the time where what was it? Karen Angle left and went with Jeff Jarrett, and PD and I were talking about this match and how you could tell the respect, but the hatred and anger between the two in that match. That might be one of those classic matches that these new young fans to Impact who didn't really embrace the TNA product or was not aware of that past should probably go back and look, because when TNA got it right, there was nobody doing it better. When TNA got it wrong, well, they become Impact, I guess. So, but that might be one of those matches. It's nothing current because everything on current is good. I don't know if there's anything on the current roster that really stands out, makes me go, you got to watch that. But if I had to recommend something, Angle versus Jarrett around that time period.
As for me recently, there is actually a lot of good upcoming X Division matches coming up. Keep an eye out for Josh Alexander. I've always loved his stuff. So just keep an eye out for him and watch his matches. He's a good mix of like X Division and like straight up wrestling. And just good storytelling in a match. I really like him. I have high hopes for, high praise and high hopes for him. As for my matches, geez, I mean, you'd have to go back. Not people always talk about the first TNA pay-per-view when we did the monthly pay-per-views in Victory Road. It was, I think, like November or something of 2004. Myself against AJ. People always talk about that match. I don't even think that was one of my better matches. We actually had to cut some stuff out and all that kind of stuff in the match, but emotionally, it was that was a pretty big match for me. The following month in December was myself against Chris Sabin at, I want to say it was Turning Point 2004. That match got overshadowed because that's when Elix Skipper walked the top of the cage. I believe that's what it was. And people kind of forgot about that match, but I really love that match. And then even the following month, myself, AJ, and Sabin, when we did that Ultimate X match, man, people, when AJ did that flip bomb and all this kind of stuff, like that's a match that I always remember too. So those are three of them that I always remember.
You only asked for one, Pete.
Yeah, I mean,
now I'm gonna do a playlist. So
all right.
I never get the same. Actually, I will. I usually never get the answer. The last time I actually did get, I mentioned Steve from Warrior Wrestling. He and Trey Miguel both picked one of their matches from Warrior Wrestling 7, where the Rascals teamed up, and it was Chaos from New Japan. And I've been doing this almost like for about 40 weeks, almost a year. And that's the first time I've done it that I got a repeat match. So I like hearing the diversity and all the answers, and I will put those up. I'm sure a lot of them you could find on Impact Plus if they're not already free on Impact's YouTube channel. But one thing you can find on YouTube is the Wrestling Perspective podcast with Dennis and Petey, and you put up new content every week. I mentioned at the top of the show, but you have Tommy Dreamer, MJF, Andy Williams, the Butcher from Butcher and the Blade, Rocky Romero's on there. I think you have Kurt Angle interview on there. So
yeah, good one tonight. We're going to record. We're so excited about Willie Mack.
There you go. So ton of content, always updating. Follow them, WPP_pod on Twitter. Catch Impact Wrestling every week on Access, and stay tuned for Sacrifice. Thanks, guys, for joining me tonight.
But Bill, can I cut you off for 1 second?
Yeah.
I got to say one more time, thank you guys so much. Petey and I, like I said, every time, Colin, I publicly on this podcast, I got to say thank you because I love your work. And everybody, you have 2 Major League Baseball All-Stars, a 4-time Stanley Cup, the lead singer of Rancid, Petey Williams. We all turn into 12-year-old boys every time we see you guys cover our stuff. And we're like, look, they did an article. They mentioned this. My question got asked. We really do that. So on behalf of everybody from our pod, I got to say thank you so much for taking interest in our podcast.
You guys are putting out a good show. I enjoy it. Like, it's not anything more than I like the show, and I want other people to share it with me. Like, they're, that's it. I can't sell it. I'm a terrible salesman, but I enjoy the show. I think it's a good dynamic. I like having, there's the pun again, but the sports perspective. You all have your own expertise to lend to the conversation, and I think more people should check it out. And I think you're going to see that. check out the archives and stay tuned for Willie Mack and whatever else you guys have coming up.
Thank you.